Committee Room 29, sound. 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 Committee Room 29. 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 Sound. Committee Room 29, 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 Sound.
Confirmed yet. That's she confirmed.
Okay, members, thank you. Thank you. So I can confirm that we do have a quorum for this morning's meeting, and I now call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome all of you to the meeting this morning. Can I remind everyone in the public gallery that mobile phones must be turned off? Mobile tablet devices can, however, be used through a Wi-Fi connection, and all devices should be muted. Password details are available in the gallery for anyone wanting to connect to the Assembly's Wi-Fi network. No recordings or photographs may be taken. Can I remind members about the protocols also regarding the use of electronic devices? Please switch all mobile devices to airplane mode and activate Wi-Fi connection. Please also use tablet devices discreetly and in a way which does not interfere with proceedings. And I would also like to remind everyone of the sensitivity of the microphones here in the room. Finally, I would remind members of your responsibility to declare any interest in any of the items under discussion today. Do members of any interest they wish to declare? No, members content. Thank you. Moving on then to item 1, members. Apologies, Clerk, can you advise?
Sean Mulholland and Daniel McCrossan.
Okay, thank you. On to Chairperson's business then, members, and a reminder that at today's meeting we will be dealing with essential items only before we move to a committee training session, which is in closed session. Members, I would like this morning to raise the issue of the treatment of our committee colleague, Andy Allen, recently when there was no lift ready to assist him onto a plane at Birmingham Airport. And Andy, I do want to put on record my own and the committee's abhorrence at your treatment, and I hope that your experience leads to an immediate and long overdue improvement in accessibility for disabled people. And I have to say, you know, I listened to your interview on that, and it struck me very strongly, and I have to say it was something that I think we absolutely must take note of when you stated that it had made you feel lesser, and that's something that we cannot allow to happen. I've also heard other disability activists, some of whom may indeed even be appearing in front of committee over the next period of time to assist us, expressing that they just avoid public transport and that they're reliant on parents. This is a young woman in particular who is an activist in her own right, and that's just not good enough, simply not good enough. It links into all of the work we're doing around the disability strategy, and it underlines the need for that strategy. And I know the Minister has been in contact with you to reflect that this needs to be reflected in the strategy, and that we do better on these fundamental issues. So inclusion, people have the right to be included and to be able to go about their business in a way that treats them as equal to others, and I think that's what, for me, would underline and underpin any approach in that. So thanks for that, members. I'd also refer you to the draft minutes from the meeting on the 19th of September. So we're moving into draft minutes, which are page 6 there of your meeting pack. Are members content to agree the minutes of 19th September as drafted?
Agreed.
Thank you, members. Matters arising then, members, at page 22, there's a reply from Armagh City Banbridge and Craigavon Borough Council to our queries on local government, remote meetings, regulations. Reply states the amended protocols were subject to quality screening and a rural needs impact assessment. Do members have any comments or content to note? Content. Thank you, members. At page 3 of your table papers, members, you've been provided with a reply from the Department for the Economy on the Commissioner for Older People NI report. That reply states that the Department for the Economy recognises the challenges of an ageing population and works to hold vulnerable consumers, including elderly consumers, at the forefront of its strategic planning. This is particularly the case in customer-facing areas such as Trading Standard Service and the Consumer Council. An update on the work the FA is carrying out to address the issues raised in the report is attached at Annex 1. So I would just reference the fact that I did attend a all-party group event that was held by the all-party group on older people and ageing in the Long Gallery this week, and that issue came up strongly. The Commissioner actually presented to the meeting. So it's an interesting report. It's a report that I have circulated, or the Clerk has circulated previously to members, and it's one I think will have to inform and underpin all of the work of this Assembly going forward, because that is a reality. That demographic change is coming at us very, very fast. Any other comments, members, or content to note at that? Content, thank you. Item 5 then, members, is correspondence, and the memo is at page 39. So, members, any items members wish to note? So we did last week, just to mention to members, because I know there's a relevant letter in, but we did send wrote to the department asking for an update on the language strategy and the appointment of a commissioner. So to bear that in mind, and I do also want to note that that report is a significant report. One other issue I want to flag up is at page 13 of your table papers, there is an anonymous letter in relation to the Irish Mother and Baby Institutions payment scheme and the possible impact of compensation on eligibility for benefits. The correspondent notes that a decision on whether to accept compensation must be made within 60 days. So there's obviously a very, very pressure on time in relation to that issue. So with that in mind, I would propose, if members would agree, that we write to DFC asking the question in relation to eligibility and seeking assurance along with an urgent response. and write to the committee for TEO if members are agreed with an update in relation to our request for information and assurances being sought. If members would agree with that. I note also, and recently in committee we dealt with the bloods, in relation to benefits, and this to me will be very much a similar area. So members agree. Are you content, Clerk?
Content, thank you.
So there is also, members, at 5.14 an issue in there around non-regulation of property management companies, and I have been dealing with a number of issues in my own constituency and right across the north, and I do mean all across the north, where this appears to be a greatly unregulated field of commerce. People are tied into contracts. There's quite a, I would say, in some of the cases I have seen, I would consider aggressive approach to those bills, and very little communication sometimes with the company in relation to them. In one example, in one estate in my own constituency, the company involved are actually currently refusing to meet me because they met with two councillors a number of years ago from a totally unrelated party or group. And that to me is just not. So I have to wonder in that circumstance, if they are refusing to meet or discuss issues with me, how would residents possibly have a fair crack of the whip in that respect? Kelly?
I was just going to say, there's been a person I know has written to a lot of MLAs. We've actually, from my own office, we've written to the Department for Finance where this actually sits. So I'm just wondering, is it worthwhile for us as a committee to write to the Department for Finance asking for the current procedures in relation to property management companies, and if they're planning to do any work to review, and if they could keep this committee updated, obviously with the housing strategy will be coming forward, and we may want to consider asking about that level of regulation or controls or something that we could put in place to protect consumers.
I also think it actually might be useful if members would agree that we consider maybe a piece of research around it, because it's very unclear as to where the responsibility might lie. Where this, I know it's a problem across the water, and I know there's a tension on it there. So it's maybe they could look at where else it is an issue, what solutions are being put forward, and how they might inform us. Clerk, do you need any more information in relation to
I can request that from Ruth.
Melissa,
I'd
is
just
that
like
right?
to comment that it is an issue and that it's province-wide. And not only is it that they ignore the residents of their properties, not that they manage, but the responsibility for the maintenance of it, and I'm thinking in terms of grass cutting and everything else, very often rests then with local community groups that take on that role on a voluntary basis, or councils, and that cost is effectively then carried by all of us. And meeting the responsibilities of those management companies. So I think that a thorough investigation just of their role and what regulation exists there at the present time, and to what extent is actually enforced as a regulation as well too, and addressing some of these issues.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brian.
Chair, well, Melicia's comment is this is a separate matter, but it's relevant to, again, in terms of private properties. In planning applications now, quite often in private developments, developers are required to include some open space, and we all know the benefit of that within a development. But sometimes the maintenance of those spaces is not sorted out. It's meant to be that those who purchase are meant to pay into a scheme, and the land is then belonging collectively to the residents, and you pay a maintenance company. But I've some developments in my area, either that didn't happen or the company went bankrupt, and residents have been on to me trying to sort out a new arrangement. And I know it's slightly separate, but Militia was touching on that. Talk about.
I think well for me I'm very much related to that issue. That's the issue that I'm referring to as well.
Right. Well, I wasn't sure was this original request. So I think it's a privately owned development where it's not a housing association and it's not a public body. It's a private development, but for those communal arrangements about gates and door entry systems and so on, a lack of being able to. Any enforcement of standards,
or even engagement.
Yes, indeed. But it's an ongoing issue because I've been trying to resolve some of these issues in some areas. You can do community cleanups and so on, but there needs to be support for setting up the arrangements where those lands can be maintained. And I understand developers can't say, well, we can't just ad infinitum maintain land, but they should have set up the arrangement in the first place, where residents pay in. So I would welcome some sort of research on that matter.
Yeah, and I think we could maybe ask Reyes to differentiate the
Private
different
from
and how those impact.
But those communal areas within private developments, if it's a housing executive area, whatever, obviously there's a public body will maintain it. But especially in private developments, trying to ensure there is an arrangement set up, and support to get it in place.
The property management companies we're talking about here are generally just private, because social or housing associations have that responsibility. Housing executive take on their responsibility, but it's when they walk away. To be honest, they are taking money off private owners, and they are the most impossible people to get in contact with. This will, I don't know, we need to think about this, because the same issue happens with park homes, and it's about this shared space and how those people are either being billed for the work to be done and it's not being done, or the property management company really, they cut the grass and then they just disappear, and any other issues they just have no interest in, antisocial behaviour or anything like that. So it'd be worthwhile seeing where the regulation sits, because I think it's within finance, and how do, as you said, how do they finance respond and manage that?
Thank you, Ciara.
Just to reiterate, it's been, I have dealt with cases where extortionate amounts of money have been asked of tenants, and then I've also dealt with the opposite, whereby there hasn't been enough from residents over the years, because it's been fixed maybe 30 years ago paying a small amount, that then does not cover really large pieces of work, and I've sat with property companies and basically going, well, our income is only this, so there's no way, despite the fact that it's a communal area for those residents. So it's a key issue there. I don't believe there's any regulation at this moment in time. The sector is non-regulated, so it's just ensuring it needs to be regulated, I think, is one aspect of it. And where is the models of good practice elsewhere? I think if that's included within the raised paper, it would be really, really pertinent as to, is there a list? Where are they? Who are the companies? And it's about how the companies can be supported as well. I think it really needs to be unpacked.
Okay, thank you.
Just to make the point, Chair, because it's a public body, as in the planning service, which is insisting on having open space, and none of us would say that's a bad thing, but there needs to be also statutory support to make sure, at least, that there is suitable arrangements in place, because my experience is then residents are left floundering, and as an elected rep, who do you go to try and get this new arrangements in place?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Any other points on any other items of correspondence, members? All content, as noted in the memo. Yeah. Okay, members, thank you. Moving on to item 6 then, pensions extension of automatic enrolment bill. So members, you have been provided there page 192 with a departmental reply to committee queries on employer costs. The reply states the proposals to extend automatic enrolment would not have any significant impact on costs associated with public service pension schemes. Officials have liaised with each department to ascertain if the proposals in the bill would impact the public service pension schemes that they are responsible for. Departments did not identify any significant additional costs directly associated with the proposals. The Department of Justice noted that one of its pension schemes would be subject to an estimated employer cost increase of approximately 26.4k per annum. Department of Justice stated that whilst this was not a significant sum, it was an additional unfunded pressure on the Courts and Tribunal Service budget. So any comments or members content to note that item? Content, thank you. One thing I suppose is that it's important that there be a monitoring process, I think, in place of the impact for overall wages for those newly qualified for automatic enrolment. And how many of those, I think it's important to see how many of those workers opt out, because there could be issues there. So it's important that while the issue of saving for later life is crucial, you don't want to disadvantage workers in the here and now. So I think it'd be worthwhile checking, will it be able to track that type of, if members are content. Thank you. So members then, the citizen space call for evidence closed on 20th. Sorry, go ahead, Kelly. Yeah.
Sorry, we're still carrying on with the
Yeah, we're still on
pensions,
that, on the
but
pensions,
I do
yeah.
have a question on the self-employed part, if I could come to that one, yeah.
Yeah, I'll come back to you certainly. So our citizen space call for evidence closed on the 20th of September, and you've been provided with a copy of the 3 submissions received starting at page 195. Would members be content that we invite each of those organisations who have responded to provide oral evidence at future meetings? Yep, thank you, members. Are members content to include a copy of the submissions in the final committee report?
Yeah.
Yep. So, Kelly, do you want to make your point there, please?
I know that the responses are all very welcoming of this, but I'd read back the papers that we had from the 13th of June and the raised paper that we've received in tabled papers, or with the questions being answered. Could we, Ciara had brought it up on the 13th of June about the Institute for Fiscal Studies and the work that they were doing on self-employed. Is there any way that we can, and this is where I don't know where this information may sit, ask the Department for the Economy, or it may well be financed through their NISRA, for the statistics on the number of people who are self-employed, who are excluded from this piece of legislation. My issue is you will have people who own companies and have employees, so they will have to have a work-based pension for their employees, and I assume that those owners will then be able to be part of that. So self-employed is a bit unusual because you can have a one-person company, or you can have somebody who's the owner of a company and they're deemed as self-employed. It would just be useful to have information so that we know what's happening with those people, or how many there are, and then also then to ask the Minister for Communities what they are doing to target people who are self-employed, who are outside of the automatic enrolment, to encourage them to take up private pensions, or they could set up a workplace pension, to be honest.
Yeah, because there are increasing numbers of people self-employed and who traditionally might have been employed but who now become self-employed within all of the new regulations over the number of years. So that is an important issue. Are you content with the detail,
Yes,
Claire?
It would be useful
Letters.
just on who they are, but maybe have a breakdown as well. Maybe if they can, if it's available, around particularly Section 75 groups of those that are self-employed, so we get a real clear picture of those
Numbers of
clients.
self-employed disaggregated by Section 75.
Yeah, that would be good.
If possible.
Yep.
And that's to the Department of Finance, and then we're also writing to the Minister to ask about any work ongoing to encourage self-employed to make provision.
The first one may need to go to the Department of the Economy, because they would be looking at the employment statistics for Northern Ireland. I know that NISRA produced them, but the Department of Economy may well segregate down and into more defined detail.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So we've already drawn the attention there via Kelly's question to page 15 with an update from Ray's there on committee queries. So are members content to forward the question contained in the Ray's paper as well to the Department and to DWP for answers? Yeah. Thank you, members. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7 then, forward work programme, a copy of which is at page 200. So members, just want to flag up there that it's been added there that from 6 to 7 p.m. on the 8th of October, there's an online engagement with Youth Assembly. So that's obviously a good one on a range of issues, but in particular I'm thinking that pension one is particularly relevant to young people. Members have any comment in relation to the forward work programme or content to note?
Right.
Brian, go ahead.
Chair, could I ask that we bring in the Irish Football Association just regarding the Euros in 2028, and I know that obviously developments regarding funding for Casement Park, but now that that's a separate issue, I think the question is being asked, what will be the legacy for football from the Euros coming in 2028, and I think we do need to hear more from the AFA about how that's been taken forward, that this tournament will not pass Northern Ireland by.
Well, I suppose I should say at this point, which is going to be an issue at every turn, we have significant pieces of legislation in. We've had to make room for those. I think maybe, Brian, if what we should do is we are coming back to our priorities and we're looking how we're going to and see can we within that look at where we might put them in. But I think we should wait till we do that prioritisation exercise if members are content, and then come back to it.
Right.
At that meeting.
Yeah. When is that going to happen?
So
Currently, tentatively, and for the last meeting before Halloween recess, so in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Right,
It's
right.
the one
There.
up north, yeah.
Okay, it's a few weeks away.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
certainly I'll raise it then.
Thank you, Brian. Any other issues in terms of our work programme, members? No, thank you. Members, then moving on to any agenda item 8, any other business? Any other business before we move into our closed session? No. And just to flag up then agenda item 9, which is date, time and location of the next meeting. Our next meeting will be here at 10 a.m. on Thursday, 3rd of October 2024 in room 29 here in Parliament Buildings. The meeting is now adjourned and we're going to go into closed session. Thank you. I'll just wait confirmation from Brian.
Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, 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 sound.